Hi, and welcome to the Choose FI Foundation's Educational Speaker Series, where we take topics from the Choose FI Foundation's pre-K through 12 financial literacy curriculum and break it down with expert speakers in the area to bring a little bit more information and ideas to the topic. Hope you enjoy it.
Hey everyone, this is Rob Phelan here from Catoctin High School. I'm here with Brad Barrett from Choose FI. Brad, how you doing?
I am doing quite well, Rob. Yeah, thanks for having me. This should be fun.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. So, Brad, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do? Because we have a very young group of listeners compared to probably who you normally talk to.
Yeah. So, like you said, I have a podcast called Choose FI, and FI stands for Financial Independence. But we really kind of talk about just living a better life. We talk about being healthier, wealthier, having better relationships, just all these kind of things that lead to just a happier and more well-rounded life. And we look at it through the lens of finances, that when you have your finances right, you have space to focus on all those other things. You have the time. You're not stressed out all the time. So many people, hundreds of millions of people are stressed out because of their finances, because they don't have any money saved up, because they're worried about the next bill that's going to come in, the next credit card bill, like we're going to talk about today. And when you have a little bit of space, when you have some money in the bank, when you're thinking about your personal finances and not worried about them, you can actually kind of win at this game of life, if you will. So, that's kind of what we do with the podcast. And it's grown into something pretty massive. I think we're one of roughly like the top 300 biggest podcasts in the whole world out of like a million plus. And yeah, we have this community that's popped up really all over the world. So it's been pretty amazing. And yeah, I'm just kind of a regular suburban dad, I guess is what you'd call me. I have two young daughters, and I live in Richmond, Virginia with my family. I was a CPA, and I left my job about 5 years ago, and now I basically just podcast. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. All right, so we're going to talk about credit cards today. And you are a little bit of an expert on credit cards. I know you had a website at one time. Is it still alive?
Yeah, both of
Okay,
them.
tell us a
So
little bit about that quick, just so we kind of get a bit of a
sure.
background.
Yeah, so basically I looked at credit cards as this tool that could help me kind of win. So lots of credit card companies give out rewards points for using their card. And I wound up taking these points and turning them into free travel that helped my family travel all across the world for basically free. So we put a trip together for Disney World. I said I had very young daughters, and it wound up getting in like the New York Times and Lifehacker and the Huffington Post and all these places, and it kind of like helped my sites like get a lot of attention. So yeah, we've put together trips to Bermuda, to Hawaii, to the UK, and yeah, I mean basically traveling for pennies on the dollar.
All right, now there is a teaser for how amazing credit cards can be. All right, well, let's go down to the grassroots. What is a credit card and how does it work?
Yeah, so a credit card, basically you're getting this more or less arrangement or contract with a bank or with the credit card issuer, and they are giving you obviously a tangible card to go into stores and pay instead of cash, right? So the bank, again, we'll use bank because that's the easiest way to look at it. The bank is giving you a limit, an amount that you can spend up to theoretically. Now, we'll talk about this in the next 20 minutes. You don't even want to come close to that limit. But what they're saying is, let's say they give you a $5,000 credit card. Okay, so $5,000 limit. And that means you theoretically, they're giving you the ability to borrow, which is what you're doing. This is a loan. You're borrowing money from them to pay for purchases, right? You might go to a restaurant with your friends. You might buy some clothes. You might, I don't know, do anything, right? Essentially anything that you want to buy, you can use a credit card for. So you have borrowed that money from the bank to pay the restaurant. And now you have to pay the bank back at some point. And Rob, I'm sure you want to go into this more in depth, but just at a real high level, like you now have to pay that bank back. And there are different arrangements. You have to pay a minimum amount each month, but that gets you in real danger real quick, because many of these credit cards, they charge upwards of 20% annual interest. Okay. So if you bought $100, let's say $100 meal, right? You splurged on a crazy meal with your friends for $100. If you don't pay that thing back, that's going to cost you $120, right? Because just simple 20% interest. Now, obviously it gets a slightly more nuanced than that, but at a real high level, we can use that as just, back of the envelope math. And, naturally, if you keep doing that, that interest keeps on compounding. You're going to be looking at a $500 meal a couple years down the road. This is not wise. So you really need to pay these things off. And Rob, I'll stop right there, because I suspect you want to jump in with thoughts and questions. I'm getting a little too into the weeds.
So now, when we break it down just on the basics of what a credit card is, doesn't it sound kind of silly? It's like, oh, you are going to borrow money to pay for something like a meal at a restaurant. Like, that sounds like a really bad idea. Why would anybody do that?
Yeah, yeah.
And then like, just in case you happen to like not have the money to pay it back, you're going to pay even more for that meal later, or whatever it is you actually purchase. So is there like why would someone use a credit card?
Yeah. So, it's funny. Like, when you say it like that, it sounds absolutely absurd. Like, why would someone buy something that is like they don't have the money for? And I mean, my answer to you is, I have no idea. I can't imagine why someone would buy something they don't have the money for. Like, to me, why, your question is an apt one. Like, why would someone use a credit card? Like, why, what are good instances where people can use credit cards? And I think when you look at a credit card as a way to get you to spend extra money on garbage that you don't need, want, or can afford, don't use it. Honestly, like, that would be my advice, is run as far and as fast as you can. But if you think of a credit card as a financial tool that can make your life better, well, then we're on to something, right? Like, now we have a tool that can help us. Okay. So like I said before, the bank kind of loans you money, but they don't start charging you interest on day one. They don't start the second you finish that last bite of the meal. Okay. They start charging you interest after, it's called like the statement close. All right. And actually, you have even a period of when you have to pay this by. So again, let's just talk in generalities. You normally have about 30 plus days of an interest-free loan. So the bank is just giving you money, and you don't have to pay it back for roughly 30 days. Now, again, there is some nuance, just like anything, but let's just use that as our general guideline. So that is free money you're getting. Now, I didn't have to, in my case, I don't want to walk around with cash. I mean, who wants to walk around with like stupid green bills, dirty bills sitting in your wallet? Like, I don't want to have to go to the ATM. I don't want to have to pay ATM fees. I don't want any of that nonsense. So I personally use my credit card for everything. Every single purchase that I possibly can, I use my credit card. And again, the bank is giving me free money, and they're not charging me a cent for it. They're not charging me nothing. And I don't have to pay it back, right?
Yeah, and like, especially in the current times, like, we are recording this in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and I noticed, 2 days ago, somebody, a vendor would only take cash. And I'm like, ew, like, I don't want to touch cash right now. Like, that it's gone through how many people, it doesn't get sanitized. And like, if ever there was something that would potentially spread a virus, it's probably going to be handling money and exchanging back and forth with each other. Whereas,
and
like,
being that close to somebody, that makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense.
Like a credit card, like, if you go to the grocery store and you pay the credit card, like, yes, you do have to go up to the keypad, but usually you insert your card and then you just take it out again, and hopefully you don't have to touch anything. You might have to sign your name or something like that.
Yeah, but just to close the loop on that. And then, I pay my credit card off in full. So I just basically send a payment from my bank, or send a check or something, but mostly an electronic payment. So it's super easy. I have it set up automatically, and I have enough money in my bank always to pay that credit card in full. So I get charged nothing. So I don't have to walk around with these dirty dollar bills. I don't have to go to the ATM. I don't have to worry, do I have cash? all of these things. And I can do it without thinking. It makes my life just dramatically easier in that way.
Okay, but now it sounds crazy on the bank's part. Why are they just throwing out free 30-day loans? Like, how are they making money out of this?
Yeah. So they make money multiple ways. The two that spring to mind for me very quickly are now I said, when I swipe that credit card, let's say at the grocery store, I pay nothing, right? I get this 30-day interest-free loan, but the grocery store has to pay. Okay. So they pay the bank, some fee, let's call it like a merchant fee or something. It's usually, depending on how it works, it's usually about, I think, about 2%.
Yeah.
I've seen, depending on how big a store and what kind of, pricing they can get, but 2% is reasonable. It goes up to 3%, I think, at the very least. So let's say 2 to 3%. So if you spend $100 at the grocery store, that grocery store, Kroger or whatever, Food Lion, they pay the credit card company $2 or $3. Okay. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you multiply that by tens upon tens of millions of transactions, the bank is making a decent bit of money on that. And now that's probably, I haven't looked into the numbers, maybe you have, Rob, but I think that's probably dwarfed by the second way that banks make money is through that interest. So now I said, I pay it off every month on time and in full, so I don't get charged interest, right? But there are tens upon tens of millions of people who get into trouble with credit cards, right? Who spend more money than they have, and they can't pay that even close to in full. So when I say in full, I mean, if you have $1,000 that you spent that month on your credit card, that means you pay off the full $1,000 at the end of the month, right? For many people, they can only pay the minimum. That might be $20. So that other $980 that's left over is being hit with that interest, right? So that interest starts accruing and it starts compounding on these people's accounts. And the bank is making, if they're making 20% on your money, I mean, they're doing pretty well. So I suspect for every person like me who thinks about a credit card as one of my best financial tools, there are 5 or 10 people who are paying interest. So, the banks are not hurting for money here, unfortunately.
No, it's definitely not an industry that is struggling to generate income. So yeah, there's a couple of things that have come up here. So the first one, I want to kind of dip back into how credit cards work. This is a type of loan that is different to a mortgage or an auto loan. So we call this one revolving credit. Can you kind of explain to me what revolving credit is?
Ooh, that's you're really taxing my
Yes.
definitions here.
So we have two types of loans that are the most common ones you have. You have an installment loan, which is what you get with a mortgage or an auto loan. So that's where you borrow a fixed amount of money. The bank says, okay, here's your term, here's your interest rate, and you're going to make this payment every month for the entire term until the loan is paid off. A credit card is different, and it comes in the same category as a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit. And this is a revolving credit line. So
right. So yeah, you have that amount. Like I said before, you have that $5,000 total, and again,
is that credit limit, right? The amount that you
credit
could
limit,
borrow. Okay,
and that's just hypothetical. So every credit card is going to have a different situation. I have a credit card with the $35,000 limit, so I could go buy a BMW 3 Series on that card if I really wanted to. Obviously, I would never do that, but though it would earn a lot of rewards points. But so again, the bank, like you said, you have a specific contract when you have a mortgage. You have a defined payment where every month for 30 years, in the case of most mortgages, 15 years, whatever it may be, whatever the contract is, you have to pay that exact amount or you're going to be in default within 90 days, let's say. Yeah. Whereas with this credit card, like you said, revolving, I guess, is the term, which frankly, I completely forgotten about. So thank you, Mr. Phelan. I appreciate it.
It's an educational show.
Yeah, no, that's very impressive. And yeah, you really, the onus is on you to figure out what you want to or can pay. Now, when you put that into the consumer who may not know enough, they may not know that they have 20, 25, 30% interest coming on this and what that means, what the ramifications are. They're seeing, oh, my minimum payment, right? Like that is emblazoned right on the top of the statement. My minimum payment is $25. You mean that's all I have to pay? It's almost like the bank is giving you a blessing to pay that $25. And
yeah, here's a nice little invitation. This is all we need from you. Don't
right,
worry
that's
about
it.
it. Like it'll be there next month. It's
Oh
okay.
yeah, it's easy, right? Like, and I would implore all of you listening to this to say like that. I mean, you have to know it's a trap. I mean, that is the biggest trap, because again, 20, 25, 30% interest, like this starts adding up really, really quickly. So while the onus is on you to determine what you have to pay, I would implore you to pay as much as you possibly can each month. And then again, how it works with that credit limit is you have that $5,000 limit. And let's say you spent $1,000 that first month. Okay. So you theoretically could spend an extra 4,000, but when you pay down that initial 1,000 that you spent, then some of that credit limit opens back up. So that's where you need to think about this conceptually, is theoretically at any time you can borrow up to 5,000. Now every payment you make reduces that back down and then gives you more spending ability. But again, always with this in the back of your mind that you need to pay this thing off every month.
Yeah, and like just to kind of let everyone know, like this minimum amount, when you get your credit card statement, usually you will have a minimum amount due, and this is usually either some arbitrary figure, so it could be 15, it could be 20. Usually, I think the average is $35 a month that you pay onto your credit card, or if your balance is higher, they have like a minimum percentage that they will charge. So say you owe $2,000, they will charge the higher of either the minimum amount due, so the $35, or it's something like 15% of the balance due. Whichever one of those numbers is higher, that's the minimum amount that will be due in your card. So that means you could still leave 85% of your balance sitting on your credit card, which would accrue interest. And we've talked about interest, in classes, or you probably heard about it going up when we're trying to talk about investing. But we're usually looking for something like an 8% return to try and build wealth. And now you're talking about a 20% compounding effect on debt. Like you can get into trouble a lot faster than you can get yourself out of it sometimes. So, as Brad said, really important that if you are going to borrow money on a credit card, you are paying it off every single month. You are taking that interest-free loan as opposed to just paying the minimum and then letting interest accrue. Because I think the stat is if you borrowed $1,000 on a credit card and you just made the minimum payments, you'd be making those minimum payments for I think about 10 years. And that $1,000 could turn into something like 4,000 by the time you finish paying it off. Like it is insane how much like credit cards can cripple people's financial lives. And like some of the stats that we have for the US at the moment, like the average person has 3 credit cards in their wallet. They have $5,700 of credit card debt per household. So I don't know if that's including kids or anything like that to dilute it down, but per household, $5,700 of debt. That means that it's not getting paid off every month. So that's accruing interest. And then it is the third highest debt that the average person is carrying after their mortgage and student loans, if they're going to carry debt. So like it's a big problem in the US. So we want to really start thinking about like, how do we start using credit cards responsibly? And you kind of hinted at the first part, like pay it off in full every month. Is there anything else that people can do to kind of, I guess, reset their mindset when it comes to credit cards, turn it into a tool that's going to kind of help them build wealth? So we're not really borrowing money because we need to borrow it. We're going to use it in a responsible way and then pay it off every month. So the money is there somewhere.
Yeah. I would start thinking about this as a habit. I think that really is a way to look at it is, you need to train yourself to say, okay, I can do this, right? It's behavioral in a lot of senses where, all right, I'm going to use this for one charge. I don't care if it's $7 at Chick-fil-A, right? Like that's perfectly fine. Put $7 on. And then when you get your bill, pay it off, and kind of almost like grow that muscle of, all right, what I do is I don't put anything on. And now this is kind of a silly example with $7, but I don't put anything on my credit card that I cannot afford to pay off in full at the end of the month. So I think you need to say, all right, I have this money in my bank account. And now this leads to a question from before of what are the benefits of a credit card? And one that I missed, which is significant because a lot of you might be asking, all right, why don't I just use a debit card?
Mhm.
Doesn't it operate in a similar way? And I think one of the biggest things actually with a debit card and versus a credit card is the level of security. So with a debit card, I mean, if someone, I mean, there's fraud all the time on people stealing numbers or stealing credit cards, whatever it may be. If someone steals your debit card, they theoretically have access to all, if not most, of the money in your bank account. So, I mean,
And right now, like there's no delay in that. They can just go to an ATM, withdraw,
it,
it's theirs.
and it's gone, right? It's absolutely gone. So like for me, I want to put essentially my debit card in a safe. Like I don't want to bring it out of the house. It doesn't leave my house because that's scary. I mean, if someone could take all the money in my bank account, like that's absolutely crazy. So whereas with a credit card, I think the fraud limit, Rob, you could probably correct me. I think it's $50. There's a federal law that if someone steals your credit card and commits fraud on it, and it's proven that it's fraud, which is very, very easy to do, the absolute maximum you as the credit card owner could be liable for is $50,
Huh.
and which is remarkable. So it's essentially nothing, right? Like somebody could charge $20,000 and all you're on the hook for is 50. Now, in my experience, I've actually had maybe 5 or 6 times there's been fraud on my credit card, and I have never paid $1, zero. The credit card companies are amazing. They usually find it before I do. They send me they tell me to stop using my card. They send me a new card. It's like the easiest process, and I don't owe $1. So contrast that with, if that was my debit card, I'd be in real deep trouble. So I think that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind. So anyway,
And just before we move on
yeah.
from there, like it's not to say that if somebody does steal your debit card and drains it, takes all your money and runs, that you're not going to get it back. It's just a much harder thing to do because the money is already gone and you have to go prove to your bank that this was fraud. Somebody took your money without your permission. And during all of that time, you don't have any money in your bank account. Whereas with a credit card, there is a processing like time between when the card is swiped and the money is actually charged to your account. So in that time, you can contest a charge. You can say, that wasn't me. Take that off because like that shouldn't have gone through, and the credit card company will stop that payment going through to the vendor or whatever it is. So there is that little window of time. And then, as you said, they are just more invested in helping you out, which I'm not exactly sure why. Probably because you're valuable to them. Like you are an income generating machine, either just from swiping your card at different restaurants, grocery stores, whatever. Like every time you swipe it, they make a little bit of the sale. And then also, of course, because if we don't pay our cards on time, we become a very valuable customer to them. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I've seen that credit card companies will spend like a couple of thousand in advertising to acquire a new customer. So like they don't want to lose you. They like having you there. You're a good income generating machine. Let's keep you happy. And fraud protection is one of the things they provide.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And yeah, I mean, I think it's also incentives to a large degree, right? Like the bank's money is on the line since the federal law is limited to 50, whereas with the debit card, it's your money that's on the line. Your
Yeah.
money's gone. But yeah, kind of going back to your question about, how do you instill these good habits? Like I said, I think the simplest way is to just make this a habit, truly. So, and to understand that this is not something that, the bank is giving me $5,000 to just go spend on whatever nonsense that I want. This is a financial tool that can really help you for the rest of your life if you treat it that way.
And it should fit in with the rest of your finances. Like you should, if you have a budget or a spending plan or whatever we want to call it, like the expenses you're putting on your credit card should have been part of that plan in the first place. You kind of mentioned that people can tend to spend more with credit cards, and it's actually it's something that's been proven in different studies that we are more likely to spend higher amounts of money and more often if we're swiping a card, so debit or credit, versus actually paying cash. Like there is a psychological difference between paying cash and actually swiping a card. So you should be very careful. Like it's going to be very tempting to be like, oh, okay, it doesn't hurt. I can just swipe this card. Yep, no problem. I can't see my balance. I don't know exactly how much has been added or taken out of my account. And it can be something that people just ignore. And then that statement comes at the end of the month and you're like, oh crap, like I don't have the money for this. Yeah. So making sure, that you're treating it almost like a debit card. So like I know for me, anytime I swipe my credit card, I immediately will transfer money from my checking account to a reserve account. So I take it out of my checking account as if it was a debit transaction. And then my credit card gets paid out of that reserve account. So, it's already gone. It's out of sight. I can't spend it. And that way I'm no chance of overspending on my credit card, which I think is like a
That's
nice
really
habit to build up.
That's really, really smart. How often do you do that transfer? Is that like a weekly thing, a daily thing, a monthly? Like when do you do that?
I've trained myself to do it almost immediately after I spend. So I come out of a store, restaurant, whatever, I sit into my car, and then before I leave, I will go into my apps and I will just transfer the money quickly over to the reserve account.
Oh,
So
that's the best example of that I've ever heard. That's really, really impressive, Rob.
So I know there used to be apps that would help with this. Like I think
Yeah,
Debitize was one of them that it would like
yeah,
treat your credit card like a debit card. But yeah, if you can train yourself on these behaviors, and that's kind of what you said, like get that mindset going of this is not a loan. This is just simply you using a tool
yeah.
to benefit yourself. Like I do it for the reward points. So yeah, if I can swipe a credit card, treat it like a debit card and get these extra reward points, well then why wouldn't I do it? It's free money.
Yeah, it's absolutely free money. Right. Not only is it the 30-day interest-free loan, which, I'm sure you've talked to your students about, you can invest that money theoretically and earn some return on it. And if you're getting this interest-free loan, you're earning that spread, right? But that's you're not really thinking about that when you're when you're swiping on a credit card. But what you are thinking about are the benefits, which to me, it's the two massive ones that come to mind are my credit score and rewards points. We talked a little bit about rewards points at the top of this, which is, the banks, they really want you to use these credit cards. They really, really want you because, again, a lot of people get into credit card debt and they pay these massive interest percentages. So, you can understand the incentive on the bank's part, and they are incentivizing you. They're incentivizing you, as you said, Rob, to come on as a new client. So many of these credit cards offer these just huge bonuses, like 60,000 airline miles, which could get you a round trip to Europe, right? Which, obviously we're in times of coronavirus here, so nobody's traveling. But, in normal times, like that's an amazing, amazing incentive to sign up for a credit card. And, then for every purchase I make going forward, and again, I personally, my family, we're putting all of our expenses on our credit card. We're getting, I don't know, let's say two miles for every dollar we spend. So, that adds up pretty darn quickly. And that's like getting, a 2% rebate in essence on every dollar we spend. So every dollar I spend, if I use cash, it would be handing over 100 pennies. If I'm using a credit card, in essence, after this rebate, I'm spending 98 pennies. So that's not a bad little deal, especially when you're talking about thousands of dollars a month, right? So I've accrued millions. I kid you not, Rob, millions, probably 3 to 5 million of these rewards points that are worth somewhere between, I don't know, at 2 cents a mile, like $60,000 plus dollars. I mean, so we're talking real money. And that's obviously an amazing benefit. And the credit score, I think, just showing that you're a responsible holder of credit. And again, responsible to me is paying on time and in full every single month. And you're showing the bank, you're showing other future creditors down the road, you're showing even potentially employers, some jobs you get down the road, they look at your credit score because it's almost like a proxy for how responsible are you, right? Which is funny. Like if you think about this one stupid score, but people think of it as like, are you irresponsible? Are you responsible? Like that, at its essence, that is what a credit score is.
Oh my gosh, like
And
employers will look at your credit score and they will
yeah,
use that potentially as a basis for a hiring decision. And when it has, you're not borrowing money from them. You're not going to repay it back from them. They're hiring you to do a job, but they will look at it and be like, all right, this is a score that could represent something about your personality. In the same way that a high school GPA could do the exact same thing. Like I may not be hiring you for your ability to do high level trigonometry or calculus or anything like that, but a high GPA to me shows that you have the ability to work hard, to follow through, to maybe do things you aren't necessarily motivated to do. So like we know in high school, there are a lot of subjects that maybe you aren't super passionate about as well as the ones that you are, but you're able to dig through and get that high score. So I mean, it shows me something. Credit score, kind of the same idea.
yeah, that's a great way of putting it. It's shorthand, right? We
Yeah.
have so much information coming at us, especially like you said, when you're hiring someone, when you're an employer and you have 500 resumes. What's an easy way to get rid of 300 or 400 of them?
Mm-hmm.
All right. If somebody has a credit score of 650 or below, all right, I haven't talked to that person. Maybe it's not fair, but life isn't fair sometimes. But like, that's an easy way for me to throw out a couple hundred people who they are just showing me just from the top that they're not responsible with their credit. So maybe they're not going to be responsible at the job. So again, fair or unfair, it's irrelevant. It's just
it's a first impression.
Yeah,
It's like kind of, if you turn up to an interview and you're dressed sloppily, like you may not even like the person in their head has already marked you off because like you just don't look like you care. So yeah, it's part of that first impression, especially if you're talking about on paper. A lot of our students are going to be potentially applying for student loans. They're going to be a big one is, guys, when you go to rent your first apartment or your first house, whatever it is, a landlord can check your credit score and they can use that as a basis for saying, oh, actually, no, I'm not going to rent to you, or I am. Because essentially your credit score is a score that shows your ability to repay a debt, and landlords will look at me renting you a house as basically I'm loaning you my house and you're making a payment on that for me. So if you're not good at making payments as a landlord, I don't want to take a shot on you, because once you're in my house, it's very hard to get you out. So I want to make sure I'm getting people in who are going to repay their debts the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, that's a great way of explaining it. And also it's risk, right? So if your credit score is lower, you might get that apartment. They might just charge you a little more, or really, I'm not sure if that actually happens, frankly, but what does happen in real life is you're going for a mortgage, like you said before, right? If you're going to buy a house, if your credit score is below a 700, they might charge you an additional premium. They might charge you a higher interest rate. They might even tack on some fees. So this is real money that's going out of your bank account because of having a lower credit score. And so, I mean, there are so many add-on effects of having a real elite level 750 or higher credit score that you don't even realize. But when, again, getting these credit cards that I was talking about, these travel rewards credit cards, like you can't get them if you have a low credit score, because the bank doesn't want to spend all that money to give me that big bonus of my free trip to Ireland, right? Because if I'm going to be a bad customer, right? Or I'm going to be a risk of taking their money in essence. So
or actually, it just on that note, like a lot of our students are going to have the problem of they don't have any credit score. They're non-existent. They're a ghost, as it were, when it comes to credit, because they just haven't borrowed money yet. So credit cards can be a good way to get yourself started. Student loans is one of the most typical ones where people get started, because you will get a student loan with no credit history. Like they will give you that loan. Auto loans, you can get an auto loan with a low, bad, or non-existent credit score, but typically the worse your credit score, the non-existent credit score, you're going to pay more for that loan, because as Brad said, you are a higher risk person. Credit cards, yes, you're not going to get the nice fancy, I don't even know what those metal credit cards are that like are indestructible. Like you're not going to get one of those nice ones to start off. Like how do we get started with credit cards? Like where do you think you would start if you have no credit score and you just want to start building a credit history?
Yeah. And I think, like you said, just building that history is so important. Like, as early as you can. But again, if only, just hear us. Make sure you hear us if you're doing this responsibly. We're not arguing in favor of credit cards to go spend money and accrue interest and get into debt. That is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about this is a tool to make your life better if you use it wisely. So I would suggest just Google credit cards for no credit score or credit cards for low credit score. There might even be something called a secured credit card.
Yes.
Now, that's probably in most cases going to be the best way to start. So like what they do is they'll give you a credit amount, but you're actually securing it with your own money. So there might be like a $200 secured credit card, and you actually, and Rob, you might correct me if I'm wrong here, but as I understand it mechanically, is you literally send them $200 of your own money, and then you can spend down on that. Is that roughly accurate?
Yes. Another word we use for this is collateral. Like you are putting down a deposit collateral on a loan, so that if you fail to repay the loan, the bank or whoever is giving you this loan has something to take back in response to that. We see that a lot on auto loans and home loans as well, that you have to put up some sort of collateral. So if you fail to repay your mortgage, the bank can take your house, sell it, and then recoup their losses. So on a secure credit card, you're going to borrow from yourself. You're going to send the bank $100, $200, $500, whatever it is, and they will hold that for you. They'll say, okay, this is a deposit. We'll hold it for you, and then you're going to basically be borrowing against yourself, and you're going to demonstrate that you have the ability to borrow and pay back. So if you fail to pay it back, it's going to ding you on your credit because you still failed to make a payment, but also you're going to lose your own money. Like, the bank's not going to take any hit from this. They're not going to take a risk on you yet. But this is a great way to build credit responsibly. And at the end of the day, like, you'll get that deposit back when you're finished with this card. So eventually you can take that secure credit card from, say, like a Capital One or a Chase or whoever, and 6 months down the line, you say, okay, I've been making payments for 6 months responsibly, on time, in full. How about we upgrade this to a regular credit card, and they will send you your deposit back, and then you're into a regular credit card at that point. So yeah, absolutely awesome way to start building credit for sure.
Nice. Yeah. And like you said, the word risk keeps popping up here, right? This is risk management for whoever is loaning you the money. And collateral, that's an important word to keep in mind here. So collateral is everything. The banks just want to make sure that they can recoup most, if not all, of the money. So like with a house, with a car, they have the actual house or car to take back if you don't pay. In this case, with a secured credit card, your money is sitting there, and there's no risk for them, or there's minimal risk for them. So I think once, like you said, you're establishing this credit, you're establishing a history that you're responsible, they can start to trust you, they can see it, and then you can move to a traditional credit card. But again, I think really the most important thing is just establish this as a habit. Like I said, make 1 or 2 charges a month. Don't go crazy on this, because it is so easy to get out of control until you have the proper habits of doing this right, of, like Rob does, moving the money over to essentially shelter and safeguard it until you can pay the credit card off. Or just put 1 or 2 charges on, and $10, you can pay it off every month. You get used to it. You get used to, how do I log into my credit card and send the money electronically from my bank? Or how do I don't know if people even still do this, but how do I write a check and literally put it in an envelope and send it off? Like, that's kind of antiquated at this point, but even just getting into the habit of doing that, like, I think there's real value there. And again, just showing that month after month, you are a responsible credit card holder. Your credit score and your credit history starts from day one, and your credit score is going to start increasing. And pretty soon you're going to be someone that gets the best rates on mortgages down the road, or car loans, or gets that job when there were 499 other applicants, right? Like, it's just increasing the odds of success, right?
Yeah.
Clearly your credit score is not going to get you a job, obviously. Nobody's arguing that, but it's increasing the likelihood of success. And if you can do that so simply by using a credit card responsibly, instead of a debit card or cash, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, exactly. And I have one more question for you, Brad, before we let you go. So there is another way that comes up sometimes when we talk about building credit history, particularly when we're talking about people who have no credit history. And this is being an authorized user on somebody else's credit card. So now this is something that I don't think I really recommend, but let's talk about a little bit what it means. So what is an authorized user on a credit card?
Yeah. So you're right. This whole strategy it's a little bit murky. It's a little bit, it's hard to discern how much it helps your actual credit score. But yeah, like in essence, what an authorized user is. So let's say I open up a credit card. All right. So Brad Barrett opens up a credit card with Chase, right? I have the Chase Sapphire Preferred, and I have one card. Okay. This is my account. It's in my name and social security number. I opened it, and I want to add one of my family members as an authorized user. So I'm extending them the ability to use this credit card account to make purchases, and I am then saying to the bank, I'm going to pay this back. This is my account. So I can do that then for my daughters as well. And, again, my daughters are pretty young. So in all honesty, Rob, I have not looked into this as deeply as I should, but, when they turn X age, and I don't know what it is, frankly, it's certainly 18 at the latest, but maybe even before then, I can get them an authorized user card. So they actually get a card. Chase sends them a Chase Sapphire Preferred card on Brad Barrett's account, and they can go out and spend. Now, again, you are trusting that authorized user significantly because, like I said, I've got a $30,000 plus balance. So if my girls wanted to go out and buy that BMW on the credit card and swipe it, they could. But right, so there's a lot of trust that goes into an authorized user here. But what people suggest significantly, and this is where I have not researched as fully as I should, is that being an authorized user on someone else's account and someone's account that's in good standing, that's paid off on time and in full every month, that it helps that authorized user's credit score and credit history. Now, Rob, you might be able to speak more intelligently than I can on that, but that's where it gets a little murky for me. But that, in essence, is what an authorized user card is.
Yes, it would be the equivalent of being a co-signer on a loan. Like, you are essentially guaranteeing that if this other person fails to repay the loan, you will step in and pay it. And as you said, it kind of goes both ways in this trust relationship. There's two key parts to this. First off, if you name like your daughter or your wife or anybody else as a authorized user on your card, they can swipe it, they can use it. They don't have to get approval from you beforehand. You've basically handed them the keys to your card and said, okay, you're going to be able to use this whenever you need to. And a lot of parents do this with, as an emergency fund, almost thing. Like, if you get in trouble, here's a credit card, you can swipe it. Do not use it unless it's an emergency. And a lot of times that can get misconstrued what an emergency might actually be. So on the parent side, like, you have to trust that if you're going to let your child be an authorized user on your credit card, you have to trust that they're going to use it responsibly. Because if they swipe up $10,000 in credit card debt, like, it's got to be paid, and it's on you. It's going to affect your own credit score if it does not get paid. Now, on the reverse side, if you were, say, a terrible handler of credit cards, like your credit score was awful and you named your daughters on your credit card, their credit score will be affected by your poor credit usage as well. So, like, being an authorized user on someone's credit who is not a responsible user of credit can actually hurt you as well. So be very careful with that. Don't really recommend doing this as a strategy for building credit. It is something you could look into if you feel like, I am already a responsible credit user and maybe I have a child. So, like in Brad's case, he has children that maybe, I don't know, could you add them as an authorized user and then just never actually give them the credit card? Just say, okay, it's going to live in a drawer and they're not even going to realize that they were an authorized user for a couple of years and build up some credit. One thing that it can be helpful with as you get older. So my wife is still an authorized user on her dad's credit card from when she was a teen, but essentially she has access to his entire credit limit when it comes to making her credit score. So part of her credit score is your amount of credit available. So say she has all of her own credit plus her dad's credit available to her. So it makes it look like she has a ton of credit available, which does help build credit score. But it's kind of like you're better off just starting responsibly with your secure credit card, build up slowly, and train yourself in the habits before you become an authorized user on anyone else's card.
Yeah, agreed. It just seems like a shortcut that is largely needless and, like you said, can cut both ways. So I would just, like we said 10 minutes ago, open up that first card yourself. If it's a secured card, then so be it. Send them a couple $100 as collateral and just get started, but get started responsibly. I cannot say that word enough. I want to make sure I say it 30 times in this conversation. This is all about being responsible, and this one tool can really help you dramatically.
Yeah. All right. So Brad, if people like this conversation, they want to learn more about managing their own money, where do we find this Choose a Fi podcast? Like, how do I listen, or how do I read more? How do I learn more about money from Choose a Fi?
Yeah, no, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. And yeah, if you have any type of smartphone and you have a podcast player, Apple Podcasts is an easy way. Just search Choose FI. So again, FI for financial independence. So make a choice, choose FI. And great way. We actually have a foundation, Rob, that you're an integral part of, and producing just amazing content to help people get started with their financial lives. Because a lot of people, I know my parents didn't know anything about finance. I had to learn it all on my own, and we want to help people get started. So we have a foundation where there's a K through 12 curriculum, which I know you're working on with your students. We also have a free course that is really, really helpful. It's called FI 101. So you can just go to choosefi.com/FI101. And it's an entirely free online course to do at your own pace. And I think it'll get you started for really to set up a very wealthy and secure financial life. So, now's the time to get started.
Awesome. Brad, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rob. This was fun.